Welcome to the Courting Happiness podcast. This is a space where self-care becomes part of your day. A space where you learn evidence-based strategies to help your life, share it with those you love, and cultivate well-being at work. I'm your host, Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm a former news director, television reporter turned happiness scholar, TEDx speaker, and transformational trainer. I also understand hardships. While working my dream job in television, I lived a nightmare suddenly becoming a young widow after 86 days of marriage. I became committed to learning more about resilience, healing, and happiness. This is how I discovered my area of research, which is positive psychology. Now I'm living my calling of training individuals and organizations on happiness. And my new chapter begins with being happily engaged. The Courting and Courting Happiness is about a true courtship. I like to say commitment with happiness. The K in courting stands for the vulnerability of sharing my story, inspirational interviews with phenomenal people, the infusion of positive psychology, and so much more. You'll learn how to commit to your well-being one episode at a time. I hope you subscribe and share. So, are you ready? Let's get started. Welcome to episode 80. I'm Dr. Kortni Alston. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. So I always say this, and it is my mantra. It is something I share during training sessions. It's something that I often end with some episodes of this podcast, but I've decided to start sharing it more often and just continue to reiterate it. And for those of you who know me and know me well, know I share this often, but your well-being is your most important job. Your well-being is your most important job. And we're going to talk about that today on the podcast, and also as it relates to what you can do to make sure that you are honoring your well-being, right? Because a big part of that is making sure that you are honoring elements of your well-being and also really honoring you. So honestly, practicing a little self-kindness and being thankful has been transformative for me. Self-kindness and being thankful. And it's interesting because in positive psychology, we often refer to self-kindness as self-compassion. And when I'm talking about being thankful, we often refer that to gratitude, right? And really is showing us the value of inward compassion, right? In terms of being kind to yourself, self-compassion, and practicing gratitude is focusing on the goodness in our lives. And today I am so grateful to say that. And I'm grateful to share that with you. I say that because I am recovering from surgery that I had over a month and a half ago. I'm working on multiple projects. I'm balancing my speaker calendar, my training calendar, my work as a professor, and my work in different on boards and different service that I'm doing. And as you notice, right, the list is kind of going on, right? I'm grateful, though, that even though I'm sharing all these things that I'm working on, I'm grateful that I'm not wearing busy as a badge. I'm not wearing it as a badge, not wearing busy as a badge. I value all the things that I'm working on. I value all the people that I'm working with, right? But I'm not wearing busy as a badge, because what I'm learning is that practicing self-compassion, and as a dear friend of mine loves to say, it's not about pushing through, right? Sometimes we say to ourselves, I'm just going to push through this. I'm just going to push through it. Have you ever said that to yourself? And she's right. It's not about pushing through. It's about living well. It's about honoring your feelings. It's about you. My amazing fiance, who I think I probably talk about very often on the podcast, right? And I talk about him very often in the classroom too when I'm teaching students. I'm a university professor, but I even talk about him when I'm doing corporate training. And I talk about how incredible he is. I mean, he is an amazing man. He is a supportive person. He is so kind. He is incredibly kind. And I'm not just saying just to me, he is a man who is a friend to all. And on top of that, that's personally, right? And then professionally, he's he's a rock star. He's a rock star personally and professionally. He's a 3-time Emmy Award winning journalist and multiple other awards, just to name a few. And what I love saying about my amazing fiance is how he's helped me. Right? Remember, I just told you I'm not wearing busy as a badge, right? So my amazing fiance, Ken Lemon is his name. He has been extremely supportive in our relationship. And just recently, he drove me to work. Now, some would say, oh, that's great. Your fiance drove you to work. For those of you who know me, and those of you who have really been listening to quite a few episodes of the Courting Happiness podcast, and for those of you who might have just listened to episode 72, when I talk about how to commute happy, I talk about my commute. And so he drove me to work. My commute is 2 hours one way. 2 hours one way. So today he drove me 4 hours, 2 hours to and 2 hours back home. And on top of that, he even served as a guest lecturer in my class. And that class is a news writing class. So they loved everything about it. And what I also loved is how we taught it together. But then I also really valued seeing him in the classroom, sharing his knowledge and sharing his passion, and just being the incredible rock star of a man that he is. Students were so engaged. Of course, he's brilliant. But what was so comforting is how I welcomed it all. Right. I love the fact I call it every time he's on campus with me and he takes me to work. I call it bring my future husband to work day. My fiance, taking my fiance to work day. I love it. But what I love is that sometimes when you've been that person accustomed to doing it all, that we can get kind of used to doing it all. And practicing self-compassion helps me humanize myself to know that I can't do it all. Not always, right? Some days are better than other days. Some months may be better than other months, right? But when I humanize myself and I communicate to myself as my own best friend, as a cheerleader to me, opposed to the opposite, right? And I love this because one of the leading scholars and the pioneer as it relates to self-compassion research is Dr. Christian Neff. And she has a quote that I often share, and I want to share it with you in this podcast. And she says this quote, unlike self-criticism, which asks if you're good enough, self-compassion asks, what's good for you? Self-compassion asks, what's good for you? So right now, I want you to think about what is good for you. Do you need rest? Do you need to turn off the email or not look at it and decide, okay, I'm going to save it for tomorrow. I'm going to save this for tomorrow. Do you need to outsource certain needs in your home or your office? Do you need help with your kids? Have you been thinking about hiring a nanny or hiring someone that's going to maybe serve some needs for your kids? Might be tutoring, might be um, in terms of helping them as it relates to an activity that they love, that you feel that a person that has a certain skill and ability could really serve them as it relates to that, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's just a hobby and it's something that that really would serve your family, or maybe a hobby for you. Do you need a hobby? Right? So, do you need to book that retreat to reclaim your life? Have you thought about it? Have you thought about what it looked like? What it looks like? I should say, what does it look like? It's interesting because a dear friend of mine booked her retreat probably about a couple of weeks ago now, um, during spring break. I loved being a part of that process with her. How she was looking at different, incredible, beautiful um, resorts and boutique hotels and thinking about what was that perfect fit. And she certainly found it right there on the beach, looking at the water and listening to the ocean as she slept. And so it recharged her. It really helped her honor herself. So, do you need to book that retreat to reclaim your life? Right? I also mentioned some other things: the hobby, rest, email, outsourcing. What does it look like for you? Whatever those needs are, I want you to focus on what that looks like for you. For me, it's been practicing fierce self compassion. It's been strengthening boundaries, and it's also been the practice of letting go. One of the things I will love, one of the things I should say I love saying is I love musicals. And matter of fact, I even have a playlist on Spotify. So if you ever want to check out my musical playlist on Spotify, please do. It's under Dr. Kortni Alston. I also have a Courting Happiness playlist, by the way. And so feel free to check it out. But one of my favorites happens to be, well, I love all things Idina Menzel. And of course, Idina Menzel, Rent and Wicked and Frozen, right? And I love Let It Go. And sometimes when I'm trying to let go of what's not working for me, to let in what is, I often think about the song. I often play the song. I often I often sing the song, right? But for me, it's practicing letting go too. Today, today is a different type of podcast. And I wanted to do this in hopes that it will give you permission to take a break, give yourself permission to power down, and give yourself permission to be human. And think of something or someone you're grateful for. Are you grateful that they are always there? Are you grateful that they did something without you asking because they just know you so well? Right? Are you grateful for kindness that people in your life are showing you? Or are you like me and you're grateful for a phenomenal fiance who decided to go the extra mile, literally, by driving me to work 220 miles round trip? So let this episode be your greatest permission slip to focus on what you need. Feel free to keep on playing it again and again if you need that reminder. If you need to slow down, if you need to think about how am I going to rest, or how am I going to rest more? What do I need? If you need permission in regards to thinking about what you need to honor yourself, please consider this episode your bestie, your companion, your member of your self-care squad, right? Because I certainly am a member of your self-care squad, and I'm always cheering you on. And I'm always going to remind you about the value and the importance of making sure that you're taking care of you. And again, let this episode be your greatest permission slip. I often talk about permission slips, and one of my favorite psychologists, her name is Dr. Katie Raher. She's been on the Courting Happiness podcast, and she actually gives her clients these permission slips, which I think is the greatest thing ever. And I love permission slips because sometimes we need to kind of revert to some things that we did in childhood to remind us that what we need to kind of do as an adult. And, when we were children, we would have to go and get permission to go on that field trip or to go out of the country, or, whatever the case may be as it relates to your class. And as an adult, we need to also grant ourselves permission. Grant ourselves permission to slow down. Grant ourselves permission to rest. Grant ourselves permission to recharge. And grant ourselves permission to be human. Your well-being is your most important job, and I hope you do so by honoring what's good for you. Thank you for listening. Let's continue this conversation online. Email us at podcast@drkortnialston.com. That's podcast@drkortnialston.com. Join us on Instagram at Courting Happiness. Don't forget, that's courting with a K. Also, I hope you join our private Facebook community. You can find us at Courting Happiness Podcast Community. Our private Facebook group is a safe haven to share, meet more people looking to build positive relationships, focus on well-being, and create a happier life. Now, are you ready to spread happiness? We hope you subscribe and share this podcast with your family, friends, coworkers, and all the important people in your world. We release a new episode every Thursday. Congratulations on your continued commitment to your courting happiness journey. Thank you so much for listening. We want you to be well, be happier, and be kinder to yourself. We can't wait to see you next week.